Hi, welcome back to another book video. Today we are going to be doing my top authors and I'm going to do it by genre. Now I'm so excited about this video because I have so many favorite authors. I always have, anytime I have like a friend or someone who's trying to get into reading or just someone who is a reader and they're asking me about a certain genre or like what I would recommend, I just love, there's so many good authors in each genre that I just love to talk about. And I'm just really excited for this video. I'm kind of in a weird mood today, so I'm sorry if I'm kind of too much to handle, but it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. I'm really excited though, because in today's video, I'm gonna be talking about 3 of my favorite genres. I know there's way more than obviously what I'm gonna list today, but these are the 3 that I typically stick to. If I'm going to a bookstore, these are the sections or the categories that I will look at and try to find different books in. But I'm gonna go from least read to most read. So mystery thriller. I love mystery thrillers, but I have to be in the mood for them. So that's why they're kind of the first ones I'm gonna talk about. The second one I'm gonna talk about is romance, because I do love a good romance. I feel like I throw in a romance in between a lot of my books just for something lighter and more fun. Just something that's more lighthearted, something that I don't have to think too hard about. And I'm a romantic at heart, so I love romance books as well. And the final category is gonna be fantasy, which I absolutely love. Fantasy is what got me into reading. I started with fantasy growing up, and that's always been the one genre that I always have stuck to. I love fantasy books. That's another reason why I started reading more romance, because their romance is usually a huge plot point in a lot of fantasy books. And that's kind of what kind of transitioned me into that world. And then I started getting into like Criminal Minds and those kind of shows whenever I got a little bit older. So that's what kind of led me into mystery thrillers. So that's why those 3 genres are super important to me, super popular for me to look at. Obviously there's way more than just those 3, but those are what I'm gonna talk about today. Now, how we're gonna do this is when I talk about each genre, I'm gonna probably list about 5 or 6 authors within each genre. Obviously there's more, obviously. These are just the ones that I seem to look for, and if the author comes out with a new book, I will lean towards buying that over like an author who I know nothing about. So I'm just gonna talk about a few different authors in each genre and kind of explain what I think of each author. I understand that, well, my impression for a lot of readers, I feel like this is what kind of makes people shy away from certain genres, is because they'll read one book in that genre. If they're starting out like mystery thrillers for the first time, they'll read one book and then they won't like the writing style or that type of author kind of turn them away from it. So then they'll think, oh, that genre is not for me. But I'm gonna tell you this, there are so many different types of authors with different writing styles. And I think that honestly, there could be a book for you in any genre that you would like if you found the right author. So I will explain that, you know, certain authors, like how I felt about them. I'll explain some of the books that they've written and just my thoughts on all of that. So this is another video where you'll get to hear a lot of my opinions and my thoughts on books that no one cares about, but I like to ramble on about. So buckle up, grab yourself a nice little coffee or drink of choice, and let's get on into it. So the first genre that I'm going to be talking about today is going to be the mystery thriller category, like I said earlier. Now, the first author or authors that I'm going to be talking about today is more YA mystery thriller type books. I feel like YA is a really good starting point if you're just getting into a mystery genre, just because it's more fast-paced, it's easier to understand, and it's more fun, honestly. Like, I'll explain that in just a minute. But the first author I'm going to talk about is Natalie D. Richards. Now, you probably have seen, if you've ever gone in a YA section at a bookstore, you've definitely seen Natalie D. Richards books, because her books, she has so many. I don't even know, like on the back of this book, there's already 5 other books listed. She has so many good thriller novels that I have enjoyed. Like, I own a lot of her books. I think I might own like 4 of her books, but every single one I've read has been very fast-paced. It's kept me on my toes. It keeps you guessing. I have so many different theories about what's gonna happen within her books. And it's not super like dark and depressing. So I think that also helps, but I just really enjoy her writing style. It's so fast, like right when you start it, it gets you into the action. It's so fast paced that I feel like if you are just starting with a mystery thriller type genre, you've never read one of those types of books, her books would be a really good starting point for you. This is actually my favorite book that she's written, Five Total Strangers. This I literally read in a day because it was that good. Like, I also had my friend buy this book, and then she said the same thing once she started getting into the story. And she's not a big reader, but once she got into the story, she was hooked and she could not stop reading. She would stay up late reading this. So I definitely think that this is a really good starting point. And another good YA author that I really enjoy is Vincent Ralph. Now, he only has 2 books at the moment, so I am keeping my eye out for anything that he writes in the future. I'm gonna buy whatever he writes. But the first book I read by him was 14 Ways to Die. This one, I just really like the concepts of his books. Once again, it's very YA thriller type book, so it's very fast paced. This one, the main character's mom was a victim of a serial killer. So it's like so many years later, and the daughter, she actually enters into this internet reality show where every week she'll film clips of her and she's trying to solve the case of who the serial killer that killed her mother. And it's so interesting because the world is watching. Everyone's trying to figure out who is the serial killer. So it also brings higher stakes for her because she's exposing herself. So whoever the serial killer is could be watching her videos and some stuff starts happening and it just really picks up from there. Really enjoyed this one. And then the second one I read by him was Lock the Doors. I actually just read this earlier this year and I really enjoyed it. It was like right off the bat, into the action. I had so many different theories for what was gonna happen. And when I found out what happened, it was just like, but his books, I think, are just like Natalie D. Richards. They're so fast-paced, really easy to understand and read, and I just think they're super fun. So if you're just getting into mystery thrillers, I think that these 2 authors are a really good starting point for you. And the next author in this genre is going to be Lisa Jewell. Now, I know a lot of people know about Lisa Jewell. I feel like Lisa Jewell's books have gotten way more popular, especially since she released Then She Was Gone. This book, I'm not even kidding, read in one day. So good. The only thing about Lisa Jewell's writing, though, is I will say I read some of her older books that she wrote, and I definitely think this is her best one she's written. Her older ones, they were still good, but I feel like they had a lot of slow points. It was hard to really like dive in. Like, I don't know, this one I felt like it was just every single chapter in this book was just very fast paced and it made sense. There were no slow areas. It was just go, go, go from start to finish, which I really enjoyed. I will say though, I will not read a Lisa Jewell book if I'm in kind of a weird headspace, like mindset. I think you have to be in the right headspace if you're gonna read her books, because I will say everyone I've read has left me with kind of like an eerie feeling afterwards. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's definitely not like a suspenseful type book. It's more just eerie. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but I do think her newer stuff is better. So if you're gonna read her books, read her most recent releases, because I think she's just getting better and better as a writer. And I do believe that her next book will be even better than this one. So I am looking out for her books, but she also has a lot of different books as well. So if you wanna go through her books, go for it. Maybe start from her earliest first and work your way to this one, because after I read this one, I had such high hopes for her other books that I was a little disappointed when I read the other ones. But I think that's just because she's been growing as a writer, as most all authors do. She was just growing as an author, and I feel like her newer stuff is just better. So if you're in a good headspace, definitely pick up Lisa Jewell. Her books are so good. And the last 2 authors I'm gonna talk about in the mystery thriller category, these ones took me by surprise, I must say. These actually, one of my coworkers, she introduced me to these 2 authors, and ever since I read their books, I look for them every time I'm at the bookstore. And they were so interesting. It was something that I'm not used to reading. So I think that's what took me by surprise when I first started them or looked at them. I was like, I probably won't like this as much. It might take me a while to finish these. But I finished them like within 2 days, all of her books, all of these books. So the first author I'm gonna talk about is B.A. Paris. Now, The book that I enjoyed the most by B.A. Paris is The Therapist. I do know B.A. Paris just released The Prisoner, which you've probably seen this one or The Prisoner at Target. I see a lot of B.A. Paris's books at Target, so really easy to find, but just it's so suspenseful. That's what really got me. Their books are so good. They're definitely older, like they're about characters who are older, which is fine. I think that's why it kind of threw me off, because most of the characters I read about are close to my age or younger, like somewhere in there. This one actually was kind of spooky to me. Like, I would not want to read this at night because it deals with a lot of stuff that could actually happen in real life. It wasn't like paranormal scary. It was more like people breaking in and, like, you know, stalking, like that kind of scary, where this happens all the time. And it kept me on my toes until the very end. I did not know what was gonna happen. I had theories, and I think I might have guessed this one, but it was still super interesting. I did not guess The Prisoner. That one threw me off, it was still good. But I just think that this is a really good author to look out for. I know that sometimes, like, looking at authors like this, you think that, oh, you know, a younger person won't enjoy that. I enjoyed this one, so I do recommend B.A. Paris. And the other author who's very similar to B.A. Paris, in my opinion, is Shari LaPena, or Shari LaPena, however you say her name. And the two books I have by her is Not a Happy Family and The End of Her. Both of these were really good and really interesting. What's cool about Shari LaPena's books is her mystery thrillers. It's more of a mystery than a thriller, and it has to do with, like, family dynamics. So I know you can tell by the cover, obviously, but it has to do with family dynamics, even this one too. And it leaves you, like, it has multiple point of views, so like each chapter you're kind of getting a glimpse into other characters in the story. And I just felt like every character had their own backstory, so you're kind of rooting for different characters, or one chapter will make you think, oh, it's them, they did this, but then the next chapter will totally negate that idea. It keeps you going back and forth from start to finish. So dynamics were really interesting, and it was cool to get inside each person's head. So those are my thoughts on these. Now that brings us to our next genre, which is romance. Now, as you can see, my pile for romance is a little bit bigger than my mystery thriller pile. But that's just because I put multiple books by the same author in this pile. So no, I don't have, I mean, yes, there are this many authors that I do enjoy, but no, I'm only gonna talk about 6 today in the romance category. The first one I'm gonna talk about is Lauren Asher, which is the Dreamland Billionaire series, so The Fine Print, and then all those other books. So these books, just have to say, I loved this series. It was so good. I love that it talked about each brother in this series, and the story does not wrap up until the last book. You have to really read through the whole thing to see if they accomplish what they set out to do in the first book. So I did like how you got to see multiple characters throughout each of the books, even the ones that you had already read, like in the first book, you get to see them, glimpses of them in all 3 books. So I love that. I love whenever all the stories are, like, interwoven with each other. But these books I thought were just really easy, fast-paced romance books. I will say, if you are the type of person who doesn't love strictly romance, this might not be the book for you, because I do think a lot of Lauren Asher's books rely heavily on the romance, which is not a bad thing. But yeah, there's some other side stuff going on, but it's like the couples together almost the entire book. Like, it's their interactions, them working through things, trying to figure stuff out, and also, like, get to know each other and all that kind of stuff. So I think that this relies heavily on the romance plot, which is great if that's what you're interested in. And they are kind of thicker, but I didn't mind it. I thought that they were so fast paced that I kind of flew through each of these, and I just really enjoyed reading them. The next author I'm gonna talk about is Ali Hazelwood, who is one of my favorites. Now, I know there's a lot of people with mixed feelings about Ali Hazelwood. I just finished Love Theoretically by her, and I know a lot of her books, like, so The Love Hypothesis, Love on the Brain, and then Love Theoretically. All 3 have very similar plot lines, which I know that bugs a lot of people, because they're like, oh, I just read this. It's the same writing style, different character names, but same book. Sort of, yes, I could see that angle, but it's a STEM romance, and I just love just the plot line. I love when the guy falls first, which definitely happens in all 3 books. And it's just so cute. It's so cute. The banter, everything about it, it's just awesome. I eat up her writing. I will read anything she writes. I actually just saw that she announced her next book that she's releasing next year, I think. And it's literally gonna be a paranormal romance. So she is changing up her plot line. I think it's gonna be either about, maybe it's about vampires and werewolves, I don't know. But I love that she's going outside of her comfort zone. I love that she is trying something new, and I will read anything she writes. I always feel smarter after reading her books. There's a lot of sciencey terms in these books. So if, you know, I don't understand what I'm reading half the time, but I still love it. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I will read any of Ali Hazelwood's books. So that's why I wanted to rank her. She's definitely not my favorite romance author, but she's still up there within like the top 5. So I definitely wanted to mention her because her writing style is different than any other romance author, because it's all about, it's women in STEM. The next author I'm going to talk about today is Abby Jimenez. Yeah, I'm sure you guessed it. Abby Jimenez is definitely gonna be in this video. Now, I originally, before this year, I had only read Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez, and I loved it. I really like how her stories, they talk about a lot of like heavier issues, like realistic, deep, either family problems or personal problems, and then the romance is on the side. I really enjoyed that, and I love seeing the communication between the characters and trying to figure out how they're going to work through this problem, or if they can work through this problem. But I really enjoy her writing. Life's Too Short, I think, might have been my favorite, because I don't know why. I just really enjoyed this one. And then Part of Your World was probably my least favorite, just because it was insta-love, and I'm not a big fan of insta-love. And then Yours Truly is her newest release. I really enjoyed Yours Truly. I think Life's Too Short is probably my favorite, and then Yours Truly is very closely second, and then Part of Your World. I know she has more books as well. I do eventually want to read those, but for now, this is all I've read by her, and I really like it. Her writing style is very easy to read, and it's just fun. The characters have such good conversations, and it's just so cute. It's so cute. And I've noticed all of her characters are different. She does a really good job not repeating the same plot line. I feel like Abby Jimenez does a good job mixing it up between her books. All the characters seem and act differently, have different personalities, which I really enjoyed reading. The next author I'm going to talk about is Lynn Painter. Now, she has 2 different types of romance books. She has her young adult romance and then her new adult romance that she's been working on lately. But her young adult, Better Than the Movies, you know, everyone loves this book. I love this book. If you've ever watched or read The Duff, it's almost exactly the same as that. It's just that young love, and it's so cute. Everything about these 2 characters, love it. Love it. And I know she's coming out with a second one that follows after this one, and I'm really excited to read that. But I think definitely her young adult is stronger than her new adult. However, lately I have noticed that her new adult books, so I just read The Love Wager just a couple of weeks ago, and I loved this book. This was such a highly rated romance book for me because the 2 characters, they had such great chemistry in this book. And I think that she's just getting better at writing new adult. I think most people know her for her young adult, so then they judge her new adult books and think it's not the same. It should just be a young adult book. But I think she is working hard on improving her new adults, because I loved this book. It wasn't a 5-star, but it was definitely like a higher 4-star read, like maybe 4.75, 4.5, somewhere in there. And I just loved it. This book, I finished it in one day. It was such a quick and easy read. It is a shorter book, like it's only 300 pages, I think. But the characters, the chemistry, amazing. Love it. So if you're into that, it's very fast paced, very easy. The relationship, the banter, it's so funny. I found myself laughing and giggling. Like I was so just like giddy reading this book, and I think most people definitely would feel that way if they gave her new adult a chance. And the next author I'm going to talk about is Lucy Score. Now, these are my 2 favorite books by Lucy Score, so these are the ones I wanted to talk about. But By a Thread and Things We Never Got Over. These are definitely my two favorite. They're thicker books, so if that kind of turns you off, then maybe don't read Lucy Square. But I will say, as soon as you start the book, it jumps right in. Like, you meet the two characters who are eventually gonna fall in love, and it's just like go, go, go from then on out. So I just love her books. Her writing is so easy to follow. Once again, just like Lynn Painter, banter, just the conversations between the characters are so funny. I laughed so much during Lucy Square's books, and I just think like even the inner dialogue of like the main character, it's so funny and relatable that I just want to read more. So love Lucy Square. I'm definitely going to continue reading. I know she has her third book following this series coming out, I think in a month, maybe 2 months. Is it August? I don't know, something like that. But I am keeping an eye out for that, and I will be buying it immediately after it comes out. And my all-time favorite romance author, which I think most people could guess, is Emily Henry. Now, okay, you're gonna not like me after I say this. I have not read her newest book, Happy Place, yet. I haven't read it yet, and I don't know why I haven't read it yet. I think just the fact that it's a hardcover instead of paperback like all of her other books, that really threw me off, and I kind of immediately rejected it once it came out. I was like, oh, I'll wait until a paperback version comes out. But I did see some people ordered a paperback, I think the UK version or something, and it was bigger than these. Why do people do that? I know it's not the author's fault, I know that, but why do the publishers decide to do that? Like, I want my books to match. I want them to line up cutely on my bookshelf so they look like a completed set. And that just bugs the crap out of me. So I haven't read Happy Place yet. I'm going to soon. I am really excited to read it. I know I'm gonna love it. It might become my favorite book by her. But at the moment, Beach Read is my favorite. I've read all of her other books like Book Lover and People We Meet or You Meet on Vacation. I've read all of those books, but Beach Read just has a special place in my heart because I will say Emily Henry's books, it's not just about romance. Her books, it's real life problems, and it deals with a lot of heavy subjects, a lot of heavy topics, and it just felt so heartfelt, and it truly felt like I was reading someone's diary. Like, I found myself crying at different parts in some of her books. Her writing style is so quotable. It's so beautiful the way she writes. And I don't know, she just has a gift. I don't understand how she writes the way she writes, but I will read anything that she writes, literally anything. Just these characters, I just want to keep rereading it. I've reread this 3 times. 3 times. When I reread a book, if it's like one of those comfort reads for me, that's when you know it's just so good. I'm just gonna keep repeating myself. So good. Okay, last genre. And my last and final genre I'm gonna talk about is fantasy. I love fantasy. It just holds a special place in my heart because this is what got me into reading. I started with fantasy, even from the time I was like little. I love fantasy, and I will always love fantasy. I'm going to only talk about a couple of different authors. There's so many good ones. I have a whole bookshelf in my room dedicated just to fantasy, but for the sake of this video, I am going to limit it to 6 authors that I personally love. I know that there's some more. There's so many I haven't even discovered yet, but I hope to eventually discover them and be able to talk about those as well. But the first author I'm going to talk about today is Jennifer L. Armentrout. I am definitely going from least favorite to favorite in this video, so I'll talk about my all-time favorite fantasy, all-time favorite author in general at the very end, because, you know, you gotta save the best for last. That's just how it works. I want to keep you guys watching this video, so sorry, not sorry. But the first author is Jennifer L. Armentrout. So From Blood and Ash, lots of people know about this book. It was huge on Book Talk for definitely during like the pandemic and everything. I feel like this was just the book to read. But I did like her books. I will say this series, I haven't finished it yet. I know the final book is coming out soon. And I will, once I buy that book, then I'm gonna go through, reread this one and all the other ones until I get to that final book. I think I read, I think the first 3 books, 2 2.5. I might have stopped in the middle of one because I knew it ended in a cliffhanger and I didn't want to have to deal with the emotional stress of that. So, but yeah, the only thing I have to say about this book, it was really good. I really enjoyed the world that you're in. The world building is really interesting, but the two main characters, the two love interests in this book, they just, they frustrated the crap out of me when I was reading it because they would bicker and go back and forth and basically say the same things over and over and over. So it did feel very repetitive in that way, but I still really enjoyed the story and everything that was going on in the world and the characters, all the side characters. I loved all of that. That was super interesting. Now, what originally got me into Jennifer L. Armentrout, this is one of my original authors that I read in fantasy growing up. So I don't know if many people know about the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. It is about aliens. So I will say, if you're not into aliens, you probably wouldn't like them. But it was, you know, I was going through my paranormal phase. That's like when everyone was going through Twilight, I was going through aliens. I don't care. But she was one of those OG authors for me in fantasy. So I felt like I had to mention her in this video. I don't necessarily absolutely love, I'm not like a diehard fan for this series yet. I feel like maybe once I read the final few books, maybe I'll change my mind, who knows. But her early books, those are definitely what got me into fantasy. So I had to mention Jennifer L. Armentrout. She just has a way with words. It's very easy fantasy to read. Not young, well, her Lux series was young adult. This is definitely not young adult, but I really enjoyed her young adult Lux series. That was just so good. And I might reread them eventually because it's a nostalgic read for me since I loved those growing up. And the next author I'm going to talk about is Mary E. Pearson. Now, Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. Such a good duology. Honestly, I read these, so I read them after I read her first series, which I think was like the Chronicle. I'll put it somewhere on the screen if I can look it up. But I loved that story. It was a trilogy and it was really interesting. I don't remember what I rated those books, but they were highly rated for me. I really enjoyed this author's writing. The world she's built, I think it's just the world, because it's such a different type of fantasy world than I'm used to. And it's more dystopian than anything. It's not like magic. It's more dystopian. So, but it's still, I'm going to keep it under fantasy, obviously, but it was still so good. I think all of her characters just had really good depth. And after I read her first trilogy, I knew when these books came out that I wanted to read them because I wanted to get glimpses of the characters from her trilogy. And you do get some glimpses of them in here, which really just fed my heart. It was so cute and wholesome, and I loved it. The next author I'm gonna talk about, which is super big right now, I feel like, is Stephanie Garber. So the Caraval series. Now, when I read this series, I will say it's not like her average fantasy book because it felt like a fairy tale. It felt very storybook. And like the writing style, it's very lyrical, it's very beautiful, very descriptive and imaginative, and it really drew me in when I read the story. Like I felt like I was watching a movie and I'm like picturing all the different like colors and like just designs and everything. I was just picturing everything that was happening in this book, and so I feel like it really draws you into like the storyscape, if that's a word, like just the landscape of the story. It was just so beautiful and pretty. And I know that her spin-off series that talks about Jax, the King of Hearts or something like that, I know that's going on right now, and a lot of people are raving about those. I do own the first 2 books, and the third one's coming out very soon. I haven't read them yet, just because I know, once again, I knew the second one ended in a cliffhanger, and I didn't want to deal with that emotional stress. So I have not read them yet, but they are on my shelf. I'm ready. Once the 3rd book comes out, I will be binging all 3 of those, and I cannot wait. So this is another really good fantasy author if you're really into that descriptive and just imaginative world that's just really pretty and lyrical. The next author, I feel like this is someone who not a lot of people give enough credit to, is Lynette Noni. If I'm saying that right, maybe, hopefully. The Prison Healer trilogy. I love this trilogy so much. It's definitely a dystopian type world, but it does have magic, so it's got that element to it, but it's so good. I want to reread this book really badly, but I just love the main character in this book. I feel like she goes through so many trials, and she grows so much from the first book all the way to the end of the third book. And I just thought it was so good. This is such a solid read. If you just read all 3 books, this world, it just sucks you in, and just the politics and everything that happens is so interesting. And I thought that the plot was just very well-rounded. Like everything that I had questions about, and everything that was like kind of like a cliffhanger, or like you're wondering what's going to happen, it all gets answered throughout the series, and it all just made sense. It felt right. I felt like everything wrapped up really well, and I just really enjoyed it. These characters, it was hard to leave them when I finished this trilogy, and I can definitely tell, like when I read a book and I feel that way about the characters, I know it's a good one. Like it's one that I want to eventually reread. This is a YA fantasy read, so it's a younger type, like the characters I think are 18, 17, something like that. But that's how a lot of fantasies are with YA. So, but it's still so good, and I think that a lot of people would really enjoy it. I feel like not a lot of people, I don't hear a lot of people rave about this book, but I absolutely loved it. So hopefully if you're watching this video, you'll pick it up just because I said so. And hopefully you enjoy it as much as I did. Otherwise, don't listen to me. The next author, and who is my new author of this year that I discovered, is Carissa Broadbent, the Serpent and the Wings of Night series, or trilogy, or no, duology. So good. If you want an author who just gets right into the action, then she is the author for you. Her books, they are thicker, but it's so good. And it's not like confusing. The world building is not confusing. You kind of learn as you go. So it's not like the first, 50 pages, you're just learning about how this world works or anything like that. It literally jumps right in, and you learn as you go, which I think is my new favorite thing. My new thing I look for in a fantasy is when it just jumps right in. The characters were so well-rounded, and I'm really looking forward to her next one. I know that this is going to be a 6-book series, but it's going to be 3 duologies. So this one and the other one. So I finished the first duology, and she's going to have another duology and then another duology. So 4 more books. Math. What a concept. I loved this book, and I think a lot of people are starting to love Carissa Broadbent, or a lot of people are discovering her. And that brings me to my all-time favorite author, Sarah J. Maas, or Moss. I think I call her Sarah J. Maas because it's M-A-A-S, but a lot of people say Maas. So however you say your name. I love her books so much. She's one of those OG authors for me as well. Her Throne of Glass series, I read those like throughout high school into college. Like those were the books that I read the first one when it first came out, loved it, had to wait a year for the next book, reread the first one, then read the second one when it came out, and had to wait another year. Like I've reread that series, I feel like so many times. I've only read the final book once, because once it came out, that's almost 1,000-page book, but that's a large book. And I had reread that series so many times prior, leading up to that final book, that I feel like I just couldn't mentally handle it if I reread the final book again. But I do want to eventually buy all of the new covers that just came out. I have all the digital versions because I would buy them on my Nook as they came out, and I really want to have them on my shelf. I don't have them currently physical copies. My parents did give me like the special edition of the first book, and it's beautiful. I have it like displayed on my dresser. I don't have it on my bookshelf. I have it like in a special place where I can just stare at it. But I do want to eventually buy all those books and have the physical copy of them, because I mean, a lot of people are like, you already read it, why would you want to buy it again, since I already own the digital version? But I want, for those types of authors, those books that really shaped me as a reader, I want the physical copy of those. But she also did ACOTAR, which a lot of people love as well. I enjoyed this series, but Throne of Glass will always be my favorite, just because that was really created me as a reader. Like that series just has a hold of my heart, and I will never let it go. So, but ACOTAR is really good. I do own the physical copies of those. I didn't want to do the first book because who likes the first one? It was good in its own right, but obviously the second one and the ones following are 10 times better. So I wanted to show this one on camera. But her books are just really good. Her world building is really good. She is the queen of fantasy. I will always say that. Sarah J. Maas, you are the queen of fantasy, and I will read all of your books. I don't care. I am so excited for Crescent City 3 coming out next year. Cannot wait. Have a countdown going. It's going to be amazing. This is a more complex world, so if you are new to fantasy, I don't think I would recommend, well, actually, no, I would. I'm always going to recommend Sarah J. Maas to anyone who wants to listen. I will always recommend it, but I do think that it is more complicated and it's a thicker book, so if that intimidates you, maybe don't read, but please give her a chance. Just give her a chance. She's so good. I love all of her books. They're amazing, and I will always read them, and I will always reread them because they're just that good. So, had to save the best for last in this video, and Sarah J. Maas is definitely the best, So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble for however long this video ends up being. I really hope you enjoyed hearing about my top authors. I'm sure many of them are ones that a lot of people already know about or have heard of, but I hope that I was able to break them down a little bit easier so you know if you're just getting into a certain genre, you know where to start. And I am just so happy to talk about my favorite authors because these books have seriously shaped me as a person and as a reader, and I just love them so much. They will always just hold a special place in my heart, and I cannot wait to keep reading everything that these authors write, and I hope that you enjoy them as well. But thank you so much for watching. If you did, please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I will see you in my next video.